here's another reason why you want to take control of what you're doing.
Everything kind of funnels into the only winning move is not to play the game.
So I got to ask permission to buy the gun, and then I got to pay to ask permission to carry the motherfucker outside of my house. How about you go fuck yourself?
How you guys doing?
Welcome
to the Weather Report.
Yeah,
and this is episode number 18, and we're having fun here. I got a Modelo today, and I'm on vacation, so
you better put that in your Weather Report mug. You better put that in your mug right now.
You got my mug right now? Cool, that's great, man.
What? No,
we have a special guest today.
Can you hear me, old man?
Oh, geez, he's not gonna let me talk.
Is my mic okay? Because he can't hear me now.
Well, he's got the ears,
the
60-year-old man, so he's getting a little older there.
No, I can hear him just fine.
Can you hear me, Bruce?
I can hear you.
All right. We need to get a clip for Jason, though.
We have a special guest that we were supposed to have here a couple weeks ago, and those of you that are tuning in right now that do know him as Jason Stapleton. He has been our kind of a mentor he's been my mentor for probably the past decade or so at least, and we want to welcome to the podcast. Jason, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you. I apologize. The last time we had this set up, I screwed it up. So I left you all hanging. So I'm glad you were willing to give me a second chance.
No, not a problem, man. We're just proud to have you here, man. And all of us have something in common with you. We're all entrepreneurs on different avenues and different steps and different, heights of where we're at in our walk with you and in our businesses and stuff. And it's just a pleasure to have you here. You're a wealth of knowledge. You've been, with me for at least 10 years. I don't know how long you've been with Ken or Harkos or Jason, but I'm sure that they've been around way past the time when we were at the Nomad Network. Of course, I have my shirt on here for Nomad Network. You can't see that far down, but that's what we got going on. But yeah, man, it's been a long road, and I know a lot of people that are tuning in already know your story, but I started listening to you back when you had the #1 Libertarian podcast in the nation, man. I started listening to you on what was that? Some radio show. But yeah, that's how I got turned on to you when I moved to Gilroy, California. Yeah,
you were listening to that 1 day a week show that we did. Oh man, that's a long time ago.
Wow, you turned me into a libertarian at that time.
Yeah.
Oh
man, I'm very convincing.
Bruce, I first got the whole thing from Chris Ann Hall's podcast.
Me too,
because she mentioned you. She's like, go listen to my friend Jason Stapleton. I'm like, all right, well, if you think he's good, then I'm gonna go listen. And I've been listening ever since.
Yeah, she and her husband came to the studio, and they were both great people. Like, off camera, on camera she was great, of course, but off camera she was wonderful. Her husband is does ministry in Haiti and down in that area, and they were a wealth of information off camera, so off the record. So it just seemed like very, very decent people. So I was really glad I got a chance to talk to them.
Well, she was a great person to. I had seen her many, many times, her talks and stuff as she came to town, as I was a massive activist. And we talked to her in the back room and on the side because we'd help get her set up, and we wanted to bring her into different meetings and clubs. And the stuff that she knows was just incredible. So she was one of the people that I really knew, like and trust somebody, you're going to listen to them, right? So when she says, "Oh, I'm going to be doing this interview with this Jason Stapleton guy," I had heard of you, but I didn't really know who you are. I'd listened to a little bit of Tom Woods, but he bored me back then. Now I listen to every episode. And your way of discussing things. So for those of you that don't know what he did or what you do now, Jason, still is you take very complex ideas and explain them in a very simple way, so that the common schmo like me can understand some of these really a lot of the economical stuff in the entrepreneurial minimalist, which we'll talk about later. Really hit home with me, and you tied that in with the libertarian and why politics matters to you. Not that you can do anything about the politics, but why you should at least know what's going on, so you know how it's going to affect you. I thought that was great.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. I would say I don't claim to have a lot of to be great at very many things, but I think that I was good at one thing, naturally good at something. I think that's it. I think I can take things that are seem to be overly complicated and make them simple. And I think I have to do that for myself, because when I look at things and I need it dumbed down. Like I need to understand it in a way that I can explain it to my kids. And that's a difficult thing to do. But if you can get it down to that basic science, then everybody else that you explain it to, it's easier to, I guess, if you want to call it win converts, that's the way I've always thought of it, is like, in politics, everybody's trying to win arguments when what they should be doing is trying to win converts. You shouldn't be trying to beat the other person. You should be trying to figure out a way to bring them alongside of you. And I think that's what's missing from American discourse today, and especially politics.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, when I first started listening to you back 2000, I had to be 2010, 2011, going back and forth to work. I had nothing to do, and I heard about this podcasting thing, and I actually started listening to podcasts instead of the radio, because the radio was just boom, 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 boom. I was listening to KSFO's conservative talk radio, and at that time it was just just pounding. Democrats bad, Republicans good, blah blah blah, all that stuff, and I was also going through just ending my ministry with the church and stuff like that. So I had just started, kind of morphing into another thing. And I found, I heard this commercial for, Libertarian, Ron Paul, stuff like that. I can't remember. You had a promotion going on or something like that for your podcast. I'm like, hey, I'll give this guy a try.
Well, that entire show. It's funny, that entire show was really it was an exercise in marketing and branding to see if I could do it. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a natural desire to talk about that stuff. But you said, so it started out as a podcast, but I knew that if I wanted at that time, it didn't need to produce revenue right away, but there needed to be some sort of way to make money with it, because it takes up a massive amount of my time. And I was working the show 5 days a week. And from the very beginning, shortly after we started, it started as a financial show. And then as we came into 2015, I saw an opportunity to talk more about politics. And I was having trouble separating my politics from the economics and the financial stuff. And so we made the decision just to pivot into more libertarian stuff. And when I did that, I made the decision that, hey, we needed to organize the show in a way that potentially we could get advertising revenue. And I didn't know whether we could do like a Glenn Beck thing where we ended up on the radio, or some combination of radio and podcast. But I knew something needed to happen. So if you listen to the early episodes of the show, we took regular breaks. And we took a couple of different breaks in the hour-long show. Now, those were by design, because I wanted to be able to easily pivot if we got a radio contract. I didn't want to have to change the format of the show. And so I didn't have any advertisers. We would just take breaks, and I would play these like weird commercials, or I'd promote my own stuff during the commercials, right? Well, then I ended up buying advertising. So I wanted to say that I was a nationally syndicated radio show host. And then, again, this is all marketing. It's got nothing to do with reality. I was the #1 libertarian talk show host, podcaster in America, long before I had the ratings to prove it. But I ended up buying. There are certain radio stations that are pay to play, where you can just buy a spot and you could be on there.
Yeah. And
so I bought one just on the outside fringes of Los Angeles. It was out of like Riverside or somewhere, but it just barely, the network barely reached into Los Angeles, East Los Angeles. And so when I got on that and I paid to play, I did like 3 or 4 or 5 months. I can't remember how much I did, but I bought like 5 or 6 months worth of it. And I just played one episode a week that went into that station I was paying for. And with that, I got to say that I was a radio show host out of Los Angeles, right? Because that was true. Okay. Well, that guy happened to know a whole bunch of other people in the industry. And there was one national syndication network that was looking for people to put on. And I didn't make any money off of it. I didn't get any revenue share for it. I made no money off of it, but they said, we will give you a middle of the day Sunday spot, and we will syndicate you across, I think it was 12 or 18 different networks or radio stations that were all across the United States. And that I did that for not very long. I want to maybe 6 months, But over that 6-month time period, I now got to be a nationally syndicated radio show host. So it was great for the promotion of what we were doing. But what really hit was when our numbers got to about 6,000 an episodes. We were getting about 6,000 a day who was listening to the show. We got a call from Westwood One, and it was from a viewer, a listener. A listener ended up telling their aunt about the show.
No kidding.
And it just so happened that her aunt was now running the new podcast division for Westwood One. Now, Westwood One at the time, I believe they still are. They're the largest advertising buyer on all of radio.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognized that things were shifting to podcasts. And so they said, we got to get into the podcast business. So they came to me. We were the first show that was ever with Westwood One, was ever brought on as a podcast with them. And once we started getting some money rolling in from the advertising revenue, I was able to reinvest that in the show. And so I bought advertising on Tom Wood's show, on pretty much anybody who would sell me advertising on their podcast. And I just said, hey, just tell them if they like your show to come listen to my show. And if you'll do that, I'll give you some money. And that's how we ended up growing from 6,000 or 7,000 to, I think at the height of the show, there was about 35,000 listeners a day. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's how we grew that show. Was just, we had a vision in mind from the beginning, and we just were relentless about seeing that come to fruition.
Amazing. Let's go back a little further, because one of my favorite stories that you tell before you even got into podcasting was you living in the basement in somebody's house, buying a pizza once a week, to eat, and that was your sustenance, through all that. You had just got out of the military, and this is when you started actually, thinking about making money for yourself and getting on the road and getting on this entrepreneurial minimalist thing, the Nomad Network, all that other stuff that kind of morphed itself into what we're doing today. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
That's so I got out of the military when I was 22. I'm 45 now, to give everybody reference. And at 22, I had no marketable skills. I was working basically mowing lawns for my buddy's landscaping company, digging holes, watering trees, that kind of stuff. And I was living in this one-room basement apartment that was under some friends of the family had rented me the place. It was under their garage, and it was just one room. I had no stove. I had a toaster oven, and I had a refrigerator and a sink. And I was so poor, I was so broke at the time that I had this $40 credit card bill that I'd racked up, and I couldn't make the minimum payment on that card, which was $10. I remember looking at it going, there's $10 there. And I knew I couldn't make that $10 payment because I needed the $10 so that I could go buy pizzas with it. Because you could get, at that time, Little Caesars ran a special. You could get 2 pizzas for $5 each. And I knew that I had another couple of days until payday, from my buddy in the landscaping company. And I only had that $10 left. And so I had to spend the last $10 I had to buy these 2 pizzas, because those 2 pizzas would give me 4 days worth of food. And so I used to tell that story again. The primary reason I told that story back in the day was because people would see the success that I had. Because I had a very successful business, and I had a very successful podcast, and I would try and tell people, listen, you got to do something. Like, you got to go out and make something happen for yourself. And I'm trying to be motivational, and people would say, well, yeah, it must be nice, man, because you got $100,000 studio and you've got plenty of money that you could do whatever you want to do. And I'm like, no, dude, you don't remember. That's the problem, I think, with success, is that we only see success after it's happened. We only see the result of the hard work. We don't see the years or decades of effort and struggle and failure that went into getting there. I had multiple failed businesses before that one succeeded. I tried multi-level marketing. I tried a different type of consulting business in the security space. I'd done a lot of stuff and had failed miserably at it until I managed to make this one thing work. And so I wanted to let people know that, hey, just what you're seeing is not where we started. Where we started was probably worse off than you are now. And it was a winding road. You talk about entrepreneurial minimalism and stuff. I was nowhere near that concept at the time. I was just trying to find a way to eat. I was trying to find a job that I could do that would pay me enough that I could move out of this basement apartment that I was in and to actually have some kind of life. And so it was kind of a means to an end. In the same way I talk about some of the successes and failures I have now, it's by design. I'm trying to motivate people to take action and to actually come up with an idea of what they want to do and to be deliberate about the life that they're leading.
Yeah, and I remember, like, I started listening around 2015. At that time, I was a manager at a vitamin shop, and before that, I worked at a call center for like 3.5 years. And one of the guys that was on my team, we would always sit around and talk politics and stuff like that. Well, he ended up coming in with one of his friends to the vitamin shop after I started working there, and his friend was like, "Oh yeah, you like politics and stuff like that. You should check out Jason Stapleton." I was like, "Okay, who's that?" And he's like, "Oh, he's this guy. He used to be a currency trader. Now he's talking about politics." I was like, "Nah, man, he used to be a currency trader. Fuck that." Right. And because at that time I was like, "Oh man, you're over here in Wall Street guy. I don't want to listen to politics from some Wall Street exec or whatever." Right. And so then I started listening. He's like, no, just listen, man. It's all good. And I'm like, okay. So I started listening. And at that time, around 2015, 2016 is when you started pivoting, and you were talking about politics, but then you were adding in the stories like that, the winners win story, which is one of my favorites, one of my most motivational ones for myself personally. That's when you started making that pivot, and you would start telling those stories because you were trying to get people to take action. And I remember it was around 2016, 17, somewhere around there. I think it was after the election, about 17 is when you were like, "Hey, I'm done with the politics thing. We're going 100% business." And you lost like half your audience, and you're like, "I don't give a shit." And I was like, okay, cool. And at that time, that was really a pivotal time in my life as well, too, because like I was telling you the other day in our coaching session, was that like every time you tell the winners win story is almost when I needed to hear it, and just like whenever you just had that newest training here recently, I needed that at that time. And so things just kind of happened like that. Well, at that time, when you made that pivot, I was trying to make a pivot in my life, too, because I was facing foreclosure in my house, and my woman at that time about to leave me because of it and everything like that, right? Because I wasn't taking the action that I needed to take, and so I left there and got a shitty job but paid twice as much just to make sure I got things taken care of. And then I really started. I'm like, okay, let me start a podcast and everything. That's when I started Hip Hop Hour, which was my radio show style podcast that I had for like 4 years, and I really went on that journey like 2017, and most of my adult life after I got out of the military at 20, almost 22, I was like, I want to start a business, but I really didn't know shit at all. And even 2017, I didn't really know shit. And now I feel like I kind of know some shit, and it's just, that just kind of, you take those steps and you keep going. But I know when I first started listening to you, you were before you made that shift, you were really braggadocious about your stuff. You're like, yeah, I got this big ass house. I make all this fucking money. I drive this. And that's when you started, I don't wait in lines, everything like that. But then you started adding in, like in that last half of the show, more of like, hey, you can start doing whatever you want to. Baby steps, one thing at a time, stop waiting in line at places, stop doing this, start making these small choices and these small changes. And so then that really like shot me off into a totally different direction that I'm in today, where I'm essentially self-employed now.
You're doing great things, man. Like you're on the precipice of really hitting it big with what you put together, and that's exciting to see. And I've loved watching the journey and being able to be part of a little bit of it with you, because it's it's great. And same thing with most of you guys who I'm talking to right now. I've seen the progress. Well, I think everybody here, I've seen the progression of where you guys started and where you are now, and it's a really cool. I have a cool job. I'm basically, I get to help other people bring their vision to life, and that's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, and that's basically what my business is trying to be as well too. It's just in the music space. A lot of people, that I deal with are musicians. They're trying to, I deal a lot with the hip hop space, as you can see from my wall, but and also my urban vernacular that I have as well too, but coined by Jason Stapleton himself. But
it's the best. explanation that
Dude,
we've heard of that, by the way.
I had to put the weights down. I started dying laughing in the gym whenever you said that.
Well,
but
so I'm telling
he's
in an influential writing intensive that I'm doing right now, and I'm telling everybody, because a lot of people trying to make their writing super uppity, and you listen to it and you're like that, or you read it and you're like, that's not how you talk. That's not how anybody talks. That's how somebody talks if they're trying to win an award for your writing. I said, so write the way you speak, and then we can edit from there. Well, of course, then Chris decides he's going to submit his writing, and it's half Ebonics, and I've got to like dial him back. And I'm like, okay, you got to do the opposite. Like, I want to hear your voice in there, but I need to be able to read it too. And so I said urban vernacular.
Yeah, it was funny too, because you're like, so Chris, he actually writes how he speaks, which is not always the best thing, because if you never have heard him talk, he has a urban vernacular.
Yeah. Well, there's always the exception to the rule, right?
Exactly.
So, right.
Well, and it's because a lot of times I do speak to text whenever I type. And so whenever I'm writing anything, I do speak to text in my phone. And then I'm doing it in, usually what I do is I go into my Gmail, open up an email, and start writing in the body and just do speak to text in there. And then I copy and paste it over into MailChimp. And then that's where I go through and edit it. But as you pointed out, I wasn't editing it as well as I needed to. So I've been working on that. But yeah, like what I was saying, I'm trying to help musicians get their shit moving, start actually making their stuff more like a business instead of just a hobby. And they're just like waiting around for their big break, but they're not making any moves, and that's kind of where I was whenever I first started listening to you. Was, for one, I was getting tired of the political shit. I mean, that was right after I got done voting for Trump twice in 2016 in the primary here in Indiana, because I didn't want Ted Cruz. And then also in the general. And then after that, I was like, why am I even participating? Like, that's when I really started getting out of politics. I'm like, man, fuck all this. Like, they don't give a fuck about me, and in 2020, that really hit a chord as well too with me. And I took something that you had said around 21-ish, somewhere in there, and I kind of made it my own. I'm like, you know what? The government's going to do whatever the fuck they want to do, and they don't give a shit about me. So I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do and not give a fuck about them. I'm going to stay out of their way. I'm not going to be doing everything illegal, but I'm going to stay off their radar as much as I can and just live however I want. Fuck them and what they're doing, because they're going to do whatever they want, And so I broke away from politics for the most part as well too. We talk about it on the morning show and stuff like that, because Bruce, he's over in California where politics is king, But and he's old as shit, old dog new trick thing, you know how that goes.
Hey Jason, so we know that you're doing a writing class right now, and I want to kind of jump back into history when you finally wrote the Nomad book that you had. What can you tell us a little bit how that came across and how the Nomad Network kind of evolved from everything that you were doing from the Libertarian podcast, and then you just started getting into the business, and then you did the Nomad book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you guys have been in. It's interesting because all of you, I think, have been part of the kind of the evolution of what I've been trying to do, and you've seen the messiness of it. But hopefully, you've also seen the the vein of, I guess, the vein of substance that I'm trying to bring through. And so, when I left the company that I started called Trade Empowered, it was a trading education company. I was a currency trader for a while, and then spent many years teaching other people how to do it. And when I left that company, I needed to make some changes in the way that I did things. It was I had built the business the wrong way, and what I wanted a business that created a lot of freedom for me and a lot of money for me, so I could live kind of like I live my life the way I wanted to. And then when I was young, and grew up very poor, I thought that meant making a lot of money. And I was a very hard worker. And so I thought, I don't care if it costs me 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week. If that's what it takes to make millions of dollars, then that's what I'm going to do. And when I started my company and it started to make a little bit of money, I had this grand vision that, hey, I want this to be the biggest and the best one that there is on earth. I want to have more successful case studies. I want to have more clients. I want to have more offices around the world. Like I envisioned a global brand. And we got close, I think when we left, I had, tens of thousands of clients in over 110 countries. But I was very miserable. I worked all the time. I would dare say I wasn't a very good dad to my kids who were little. I wasn't a very good husband. I just worked a lot, and I was a very good provider, but I wasn't very good at anything else. And so when that business I finally left, I decided I wanted something different. And I realized it's kind of funny when you grow up poor, because you think that money will fix it. And you realize once you have a little bit of money that it's not really about the money anymore, that it's got to be about something else. It has to be about either it has to be about the work that you're doing or about the other parts of your life that the business supports. And so when I started my consulting company, my coaching company now, where I work with entrepreneurs, is one of the things I really wanted to help them not have to have those same mistakes. And so I started this company with this idea that we need to have minimalist businesses, that what we should be looking for is more time freedom and more income mobility. That was kind of the first idea that I came up with. And I started building my business that way. And because I have a background in it, and I would consider, this is funny too, because I've been thinking about this and writing about it recently. When I look back, I think of myself today more of a creative. And this is funny because I attract a lot of creative people. I think of myself more as a creative than I do an entrepreneur in the traditional sense. And it's like, yes, I can build a multi-million-dollar business, right? But that's not really what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to be creative all day, and I want to do creative stuff, and I want to help people with stuff I know how to do, help people get results with that. And so I'm creative in the marketing and the branding space. And so I help a lot of people. I help most entrepreneurs who aren't good at those things, help them, get that under control. And so in building the new business, I came up with this idea. And after 2020, and we had the lockdowns, I thought I need to get this message down on paper. And so I wrote a book called The Nomadic Wealth Formula. And I wrote it in like 4 months. And I basically just tried to put everything that I was thinking about the way I thought businesses should be created. Yeah, there it is. How a business should be created, what you should be striving for when you're building your business, and what sort of businesses create that sort of nomadic wealth, what sort of businesses they are. And then I released that in, mid 2020 or late 2020. I can't remember now. And it's been great. We continue to sell copies every month, and I give them away for free if people just want a PDF version. I never intended to make any money off of the book. That wasn't the goal. My only goal was to get the ideas out there and expose people to a different way of being a business owner that didn't require that you build some $10 million company. And I think there's a big problem with the way entrepreneurship is taught today. And the big problem is that everyone assumes that everybody's trying to build the next unicorn company, that everybody wants the $10 million company. And the truth is that's not what most entrepreneurs want. What they want is more freedom and flexibility over their own lives. And they want to make enough money that they can provide for themselves, provide a decent life for themselves that gives them the opportunity to spend time in all the other aspects of their life that they want. And so it's been an evolution, but it's been enjoyable. And I've tried to keep the same underpinnings of what we're trying to do, even though I've molded and shaped kind of the direction that we go based on the response I get from people.
Well, one of the things that you've done extremely well for those of us that have been with you for quite a while and listening to you and whatnot, taking courses, is the ability to pivot. The ability to look at, okay, I'm not going to just keep piling on this thing that isn't working. We're going to take the thing that does work, do more of it, do less of what doesn't work. And, when you had that podcast, that was a really popular everyday podcast, you had a Facebook group, and I was in that Facebook group. And I remember it just turned into like every other Facebook, it just turned into a shit show of people arguing with each other. And that's not the point. And, you could hear it through the show, and eventually, you're just like, what the hell with it? I'm done with all this. It doesn't work anymore. I don't care if I lose my audience. I mean, I shouldn't say you don't care, because of course you care, but you're like, I'm going to get down to the core people that actually want to listen to what I have to say, that I can help. and do something for, because I think we all realized I got out of politics right around the same time where I was just like, I just wasted 10 years of every spare minute I had. From, you know, I had a regular job, and then I had my own business too, painting business at home. And then I did all the political stuff for another 25, 30 hours a week. And I made some changes and some differences, but it was this big compared to what I could have been doing if I spent that 10 years doing like what you were doing. So when you were building these $1 million businesses and gaining these experiences and the knowledge, because to go from a guy that's trading, you taught yourself basically how to do currency trading in when you were deployed, and then you the hard way, and then you
the
created
this sucked over there too.
And then you created this business that worked, in teaching people how to do currency trading that made 7-8 figures. And then you said, what'd be cool? Let's do a political podcast and take all that stuff and just do something else. You talked about in some of your things where you had gone down to you wanted to see what Glenn Beck was doing at the Blaze, because right around that time the Blaze was a big thing. I was a big Glenn Beck fan there too.
Yeah.
Before he
I
turned
was too. I liked what he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I liked the transition he made. Yeah. He made the transition from regular television to building out his own studio in Texas. And he was offering for $5,000. I wanted to go down and tour his studio because I wanted to see what he was doing, because I wanted to build out a smaller version of it for myself.
right.
And they didn't offer tours. But if I gave him $5,000, I could fly down on my own dime, and they would do this big wine and dine thing because they were trying to do these claymation videos, and they needed people to sponsor that. And so I wrote him a $5,000 check, and I went down there so that I could walk through his studio and see the equipment that he used and how he built it out and all of that. And so it was a great experience. It was well worth the money, especially considering what we invested. But, you mentioned, so I had this political podcast, and I thought, see, libertarians are supposed to be these sort of like self-sufficient, pull yourself up, do it on your own. You don't need help from the government or anybody else. And it was my assumption that those were my people, that those people thought like me, that they were, self-sufficient and they wanted to be on their own. And what I realized the longer I did the podcast was they're really just wanted to complain about all the other stupid people and how their ideas were so much better and they were so much smarter. No offense to anybody who's libertarian. I still would consider myself to be a libertarian. But I realized that the large majority of them, when I started talking about, hey, you should own your own business. Like, you should be providing for yourself. You shouldn't be dependent on someone else to provide you a job. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, your boss can fire you at any time. If you really want to be independent, that starts with being self-sufficient. And man, I would get blasted by people who just wanted me to stick to the politics. Rush Limbaugh used to call them the stick to the issues folks. And I saw what was happening inside of our Facebook group that had 9,000 or 10,000 people in it, I think, at the peak. And I just said, screw this. I don't have the right people. I thought I had the right people, but these are not the right. Some of them are, but I would imagine half the audience is not. And you say, well, of course I cared about I didn't care. I didn't care about the money. And the show was doing $300,000 a year, just to give everybody an idea of how much money was out there. $300,000 a year in advertising revenue alone, right? I didn't care. I didn't care if I lost the whole audience, because I realized that I could live on not a lot of money. Like, I don't need a lot to be happy. I need a lot. I need to have a roof over my head. I need to make sure my kids are provided for. I want to be able to travel. I don't need a lot of money to live. And so I said, I don't want to spend my days trying to convince people who don't want this thing they say they want. And so I decided I was just going to I'm going to do my own thing. We're going to talk more about business, and the business is going to be related to politics as I make it. But I'm not going to play this game anymore where I come in and continue to give you guys fodder and make you feel better about yourselves, so then you can go out and basically accomplish nothing. And if you look at the Libertarian Party today, it's the same stuff. They're angry about everything. It doesn't matter what they do. They're going to screw it. They're They're a broken ideology because it's full of a bunch of hardcore extremists that can't agree on anything.
That's
It's
kind of
like
what
all
that's
those
kind of what
people.
Dave Smith was saying a couple of weeks ago on his podcast. The episode was said something about Trump goes to the LN's Libertarian National Convention. It was before he went. It was like when the announcement happened.
Mhm.
And Dave Smith was talking about how everybody was getting all pissed off. And Dave's like, what are you talking about? This is the best thing for our movement because now they're coming to us. They're asking us what our issues are. He's like, but you know what? I realized the reason I don't want to be president is because I realized most of the people in the Libertarian Party just need to start a fucking book club. Because all they want to talk about is, Rothbard this and all these different books. You need to read this book. He's like, they just need to start a book club. He's like, they don't need to be in politics. They're not doing a political movement. I thought that was a great episode whenever he was saying that.
He's exactly right. I haven't listened to Dave in a long time, but I consider him a friend. And yeah, he's unfortunately fighting a losing battle, and he's making a ton of money with his show. And God bless him. He's doing what he loves to do. And he's passionate about it, and he's he's making national impact now with on shows like Tucker, and so I'm very happy for him. I hope he keeps doing it as long as he really loves it. But if you think the Libertarian Party or libertarian ideas are going to make a lasting impact, and someday everybody's going to wake up and realize how wrong they are, you're crazy. That is a losing proposition, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore, and so I just shifted. And I'm very happy with the decision I made.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are really honestly afraid of freedom. And you're wearing a shirt right now that says autonomy on it. And I kind of correlate both of those phrases together, freedom and autonomy. And a lot of people are just afraid of it. I mean, I don't know how many people that I have talked to with what I'm doing with the several businesses or several ideas that I've had that I've bounced off of you before. And people come up to me and they just say, you're crazy. You're crazy doing what you're doing. Why are you doing this podcast? Well, do you listen to podcasts? No, I'm going like, well, that's why I'm doing the podcast, because it's not for you. But the bottom line is that people are afraid of challenge. People are afraid of being on their own. People are afraid of, what I do is prepping up and doing my own thing, really not caring what the government thinks about it, because I've already weighed the risk between risk and reward, and whether or not, is this going to cost me, $1,000, or is it going to cost me, 5 years in jail? There's a thing that you have to draw a line there. And I think it's really interesting because you've got me to that point to where I think about that all the time. It's just like, I want that freedom. I want that autonomy. It's baby steps, and then it's stepping stones, and then it's swimming, and then it's actually getting there. And we're not there. I'm not there yet, but I want to, like I said, it's one of those things that you teach, and I think you teach it very well.
Well, it's not. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? The truth is, most people don't want freedom, right? They don't want the responsibility of operating without a safety net. And what I tell people today is, nobody's telling you to quit your job and just pour all of your life savings into this business that you don't know whether or not it's going to be successful. That's a really stupid thing to do. In the currency trading business, I would run into guys every once in a while who quit their job, took their life savings and put it into the market, and they're planning within the next 12 months to be able to make enough money off their trading to pay their mortgage. And I'm just like, that's insane. Do you have any idea how difficult that is? How difficult trading is in general, much less being able to pay your mortgage on it, right? It's one thing to have your little $10,000 trading account that you end up wiping out. That's not going to cost you your home, right? That doesn't mean that your kids don't eat, right? You're doing it the worst possible way. Entrepreneurship's the same way. What you need to do is keep your day job, but find that other thing that you're passionate about, like you and these backyard gardens that you're doing right now, and all of the other things that you've got your hands in right now that are starting to show fruit, right?
Right.
You start out and do it part-time, and you learn the ins and outs of running the business. I started my currency trading business in Afghanistan, right? I got my first few sales and my first subscription revenue in Afghanistan while I was still doing high threat security work for the government. It wasn't until I had made enough money, or I knew I was going to make enough money to be able to fund my life, and that I kind of understood it, that I felt comfortable quitting my job and going into it full time. And even after that, it was scary, There were a couple of times where we bled those accounts down, those bank accounts down to almost zero. And you're going, man, I hope this next campaign goes well, because if it doesn't, we're done. Like, we're defaulting on the lease that we've got. And it was scary. And that's the thing, is most people don't want the scary. And it's
Hey,
like, okay, go
Can I
ahead.
add something in there too? Also, I want to say, because I've had businesses that have, I'm actually, the majority of things that I've been involved with have been horrific failures, and I mean horrific $1 million failures. And you know, I'm a creative person, can design and make art and create products and all that kind of stuff. And I was in a motorcycle company in the early 2000s. And I thought this was going to be the biggest thing ever. We got the name Norton. I mean, we owned the name of Norton, that classic name.
Nice.
And but you know, so did like 35 other entities around the world in different countries. They got, you know, and so, but anyway, we had the best product. We came up with a brand new motorcycle that was really something new, different. It outperformed everything out there. It was stylish. It was super cool. Everyone that saw it loved it. The whole thing failed and crashed and burned. And like you said, even if you have the right thing and at the right time, if you don't have the structure of, I was working for someone at the point. I mean, I was part of the company. I had equity in it. I had stock in it. And, you know, I found out what a 19-to-1 reverse split was at that point too. and I watched $100,000 that was on paper that I had just turned into not $100,000. But the whole thing failed. But it was a stepping stone, because what I learned then, I learned a lot more about the motorcycle business. I knew motorcycles. I knew how to build them. I knew how to make them. I knew how to ride them and tune them and fix them and all that stuff. What I didn't have any idea how to do is sell them, or how to talk to people about them, other than, yeah, isn't this cool? Well, yeah, it's cool, but so what? You know, what's the margins in it? How many do I have to buy? How many do I need on my floor planning, all that kind of stuff. That's what I learned there. So, you know, because of that, you know, the paychecks would bounce. You know, you wouldn't get paid for 6 weeks, and then you get a big check for $10,000 for paycheck, and it would bounce. And so I'm upside down 40, 50 grand at 30% on my credit cards. We're just about out of our house and all this stuff. I've got 2 kids. My wife, we decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So on the side, I'm painting bikes in my garage still, you know, and it was like you said, I couldn't be a good dad. I couldn't be a good husband. I was tired. I was grumpy all the time. I was mad. I was smelling chemicals. So I always felt like crap. And then you go into this stressful sit, and it was awful. And when I finally got out of that, I realized, all right, I got to get out of this and just get a regular job. And I got a regular job as a product designer at a parts company. I was looking down my nose at it, Jason. Your description of when you worked at the truck place where you were washing trailers, I had a similar feeling, because I went from building like the coolest custom motorcycles on the earth to like, you know, like Orange County Chopper and Jesse James level stuff, $100,000 bikes, to making little trinkets for people that buy new Harleys. And I thought I was stepping down. Well, I walk into this company. I didn't realize it's a $70 million company. You know, I didn't know, because I was ignorant. And then I started working there. And then, you know, checks never bounced. Things were good. I had health, and my kids were happy. We can make our house payments. You know, you have to do what you got to do. And I worked there for 11 years, you know, and finally left there and we started our own company. But going through those things and being able to pivot, but sometimes you have to take the time. So everything you described earlier in your show, or earlier in the show here, is what we didn't talk about is the timeline. You know, from the time you started, hey, I think I'll start a business, when you were 22 trying to figure out what to do, and to the time that you had Trade Empowered actually left there, that was probably what, 10 years?
So I got out of the military when I was 22. I had no idea that I was going to I just wanted to survive in the beginning. I didn't realize that I might be able to make a business out of something until I was probably 25.
Okay.
And then it took me until I was 25, until I was 31, until I started Trade Empowered, which is the company that actually won. And in between there, I had 3 other failed businesses that I tried my hand at. But again, I didn't understand. And I cannot overemphasize this. For those of you who are thinking about starting a business, or who have one currently that you're working on full or part-time, it doesn't matter what business you think you are in. You are really in the sales and marketing business. If you do not know how to promote, just like what Kim
Absolutely.
was saying, didn't know how to talk about it, didn't know how to promote it, right? If you do not know how to sell and you do know how to market what you do, you are going to fail. This idea that if you build it, they'll come, and we'll just build the best possible product and people will miraculously see that and they'll buy it. That never happens, ever.
No.
If you look behind the curtain, if you open up the hood to that business, you will see there was a clear, deliberate, well-executed marketing strategy that ended up driving that business, right? Nothing happens on accident. And so if you're not learning those skills, you're going to fail, even if you have a great idea. And so that's what happened with my businesses. But I learned a little bit about it. What ended up happening was, in between the times when I was going overseas and I would come home and I would try a business, it would fail, I'd go back overseas. I was learning little things. I took a couple of sales jobs, and one of them was for a siding and windows company that was absolutely, it's by far the worst business that I have ever been part of. It was completely nefarious. They lied in all of their marketing material. They were the most disreputable company I've ever known to exist, right? I lasted about 2 months working there, but they put me through a 4-week training program on sales, which was hands down the best sales program I've ever seen.
Really?
They took you nuts and bolts through their entire sales process.
Wow.
From the moment that you walked on to their, because it was in home. We were doing sits like what's that? What's the movie with Danny DeVito? You old crusty fucks will know this.
Yeah,
Tin Man.
Tin Man. Yes.
Yeah.
That was what I did. It was going in for a sit in somebody's house and selling them $40,000, $50,000 worth of siding and windows. And you got to be well trained to be able to do that. And I went through the whole process with them, and I learned a lot about selling. I learned I didn't like it very much, but I learned a lot about it. And then when I started my business and we started to see a little bit of money coming back, I started buying online courses on how to market. And I took them from guys like Frank Kern and Mike Filsame and Jeff Walker, all of these guys who became legends in the online marketing space. I was taking courses from them when very few people even knew who they were. And I learned a lot about how to market. And I thought, that's what I like to do. I want to build a reputation online so that people already know me. They already like me. I already have credibility and authority and trust. And then I just want to make offers to people. Say, hey, I've got this thing, and I think it would really help you. If you're like this, if you're this kind of person, then I think this would be really valuable for you. And here's everything that you're going to get with this thing. And here's what we're going to do together. That I love. And so that's kind of how I've modeled my business and how I make money today. Is I spend a whole lot of time building reputation with people, building credibility and trust. And then I just say, hey, I got this thing. If it makes sense, I'd love for you to be part of it. If not, that's cool too. And it's worked out pretty damn well. I'm not complaining.
That's what Jason from Horrible Designs, he's like still working on that right now as well too. Jason, you can probably speak on it, from your perspective, but I mean, he's working a full-time job, has little kids, family, all that stuff. And then, he's in his office right now. He's, putting stickers on mugs and all kinds of crazy shit, just to try to get his thing going. And I mean, selling, Horrible Designs, that takes I mean, Jason, go ahead, but you've had to learn how to market your stuff in a way you probably never even thought you had to do.
Yeah, I don't like selling either, but I also found that I have to do it. Otherwise, you can build it, but they're not going to come unless you can sell. You can build the best widget in the world. Nobody's really going to care. So you do have to go into the business of marketing and selling. And I do like to provide the best customer service to people that I possibly can. I will go out and try reading reviews that people leave on me, whether it be on Walmart.com, which to sell on, Etsy. I go and look at that. I read the reviews on Amazon.com, and I reach out to the people and try to make their experience better than for whatever happened if the mail service lost it or if something didn't go right with them. I also read the reviews on eBay, which I have 100% rating right now. You have to be in in the business of marketing and trying to build that trust, because trust is where it's at. If people trust you, they're going to tell other people where they got something from. Otherwise, they're going to tell you not to go there.
See,
when
I was gonna go ahead, Jason. Finish what you're saying.
A long time when I first started my degree in computer programming, I had this instructor who worked for Unisys, and he always said to believe in the 411 rule. And he said the 411 rule states that for every person you make happy, they're going to tell 4 people. For every person you piss off, they're going to tell 11.
That's a good way. Good point.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
take Jason. Hang on. Take Jason for example. So Jason started with nothing, right? He started doing drop shipping and print on demand stuff, where he went with a third party. They ended up printing the thing and he would ship it. And so he learned a little bit about the basics of that business by doing that. And then he got to a point where he's like, my margins are too small. Like I'm never going to make any real money on the print on demand stuff because the printing company takes all the profit. I really need to buy my own machine and be able to do it in-house. And so he made it work early on. He saw what he could do with it and he was making sales and he figured that piece of it out. And he said, okay, now I'm going to invest in the machine. And now I'm going to invest in what's necessary to increase my profit margins so that I can continue to sell, but we'll make more money off every sale. And then he took his family and he turned it into a family business. And he said, you know what? We're going to get the kids together. We're going to have them help package it up. And we're going to make that part of our branding strategy and our marketing strategy. It says, hey, you're not just buying from some print on demand loser out there. Like, my kids this is a family business that we're running. And when you buy from us, you're buying from a family that really cares about what we're delivering to you. So quality for him has always been sky high. And what's going to take his business to the next level is larger contracts, right? So you don't ever make $1 million in that business or $500,000 a year in that business by selling one-offs online. You do it because you've established yourself as someone of a high reputation who cares about the quality of their work. Now you have larger companies or larger groups that are buying, instead of 5 stickers, they're buying 5,000 stickers. Instead of 10 coffee mugs or 2 coffee mugs, they're buying for their entire corporate office for Christmas, right? And you're putting together Christmas packages and stuff for them in order to buy, right? That's the kind of stuff. That's the next level that I would assume he's going to move into as he continues to grow and build his brand. But the point is, he didn't quit his job. He started at the beginning and he built it slowly, and he figured out the business as he started, taking minimal risk so that he could learn what he was doing. And now it is a place where he has great reputation. He has great, he has a great product. And it's just a matter of now finding that way to scale it up so that he can finally, replace the income that he's making now. And then he is in a beautiful situation because now he can decide, okay, do I really want to leave my job? Or do I kind of like what I'm doing? And I'm just going to have this extra income that's coming in case something happens to my full-time job. And that's a great place to be.
So
I agree.
I've morphed from to where I wanted several businesses. In fact, I do multi-level marketing, also with another company with Mr. Odermatt. But also, I've started several other ideas that have since failed and in some way or another. Number one, either because I lost interest in it, or it was just one of those things that was just like I didn't have the capital behind it. But what I've found with you and the leverage course, which we actually are in now, because this is the entrepreneurial minimalist, you have a program that you call leverage now. It has forced me into actually going back into education and doing courses. Now, I've done a lot of your courses. I bought a lot of your courses, but I'm also taking courses from other people like Jack Spirico and stuff. So I'm currently in a PDC class. I'm going to be getting my PDC certificate here pretty soon, and also going into master gardening. And I made that decision because I finally found what my passion was. And along with Harkos is that I love to garden. I love to get my hands in the soil. I love to teach people how to garden. I love to grow plants. I love just all the intricacies that have to do with composting, gardening, growing worms, growing soil, doing all this stuff. But I can't do that without the education. So I think being you being my mentor has taken me on several steps, and sometimes they're up and sometimes they're back down. And people need to realize that that's the way it's going to be. It's going to have these ebbs and flows. You're going to have these hills and valleys. And I just wanted to kind of let you know that, and let the audience know that leverage is out there. It's going to take you in several different directions. It might stretch you one way or take you another way another time. And it's just a great program. I want you to tell everybody about what's going on with leverage in the entrepreneurial minimalist, excuse me.
Easy for you to say.
Well, I have a program. It's evolved over time, right? So again, as everything else I do, is at the end of the day, what I'm concerned with is results, right? I want people to get results. If they're giving me money in exchange for knowledge, or it's a misconception about coaching is that somehow people are paying for your knowledge, right? So they're paying for your 8-week course, or they're paying for your, your fancy design of your program and how cool your PDF looks. At the end of the day, certainly not your premium clients, but most people, that's not what they're paying for. They're paying for a result. They want, so take Chris, who's in the Influential Writers Intensive right now. So that's a cohort that I'm running right now. And the goal of that cohort is to improve your writing, your influential writing specifically, so that when you're out there talking to people, you can build trust, build credibility, build authority. It's not about selling. It's about building the trust and credibility that you need in order for people to buy from you, right? So when people spend money on that, my goal is to make them a better writer. If at the end of the day, we haven't improved that and they can't go out now and use the skills that we've learned in order to make money with it, then I have failed. I've failed as a coach, right? And so with the leverage program, what I wanted to do was I wanted to take a bunch of people who wanted to create businesses and help them do that. And we did a good job of that. We've got a lot of people on the path to that. What it's morphed into now is right now I'm working with people to teach them the process that I use as a coach and consultant, and how I've modified my business to be able to run a completely solo business and generate a very nice income from that every single year. And so how do I do that with only one person? I create all the landing pages. I do all the videos. I do literally all the coaching and consulting work. How do I do that as a one-person operation? Well, I kind of lay that out and I help people modify the business that they currently have in order to be able to do that. But ultimately, I think the important point for the audience is what you said, which was, this is an evolution. You're exploring. I think a lot of people have a failed business and they think, oh, this must not be for me. And the truth is, it is for you, right? You just haven't found, it's just not going to work the first time, or often doesn't work the first time. If it does, hey, great. You've hit pay dirt. You fell backwards into fairy dust. Congratulations. For most people, that's not the way it works, right? For most people, they fail a couple of times. Or like you said, Bruce, they go down a rabbit hole and they're like, hey, I think I might want to do this. And then you get down there a little ways and you're like, no, I really don't want to do this. Like, this is not, I am not committed enough to this to do what's necessary to make this successful. That to me is not a failure. That's an exploration of what you want to do and the sort of life you want to create. That's about being deliberate about your life rather than just letting it carry you like a river. And I think that's what most people do, is they let life carry them like a river, and they don't ever take it. They don't ever stop to consider, hey, what do I really want to build here? Like, if I'm lucky, I got 80 years on this earth. If I'm lucky, that's 4,000 weeks. What do you want to do with your 4,000 weeks? What sort of impact do you want to have when you wake up in the morning and you go to work? Because let's assume that all of us are going to work until we're 70 years old. Let's just assume that. Because if you're like me, it doesn't matter how many millions you make, you're still going to work. I love working. And when I'm passionate about something and I find it meaningful, I want to get up and do it every day. I think one of the worst things we can do in this world is retire, because now what's our purpose, right? If you have one, that's great. But for most people, they don't. And so what I tell folks is, let's assume you're going to work till 70. Well, then why don't you find some work that's really fulfilling, that makes you get up every day and go like, man, I'm so lucky. Like, I have the greatest life. I get to wake up and do this every day. What is that thing for you? See, I told you at the beginning of the show, I got a pretty good life. I get to wake up every day and help everybody else make their dreams come true. I get to help up every day and help people who have a vision of what they want for their life, and I get to help them fulfill on it. Like, that's a pretty good life. And I make pretty good money doing it, right? The idea here is that you find that thing for you. And if you don't know what it is, then start trying some stuff. Start failing at a few things. Have a couple of things that really fall apart on you, or things that you realize, I tried that. That's not really for me, until you find the thing. Problem is, we ask kids these days, by the time they're 22 out of college, we find these kids and we want them what? We want them to find their mate, who it is they're going to marry, and decide what they're going to do with the rest of their life. And we ask them to figure those two things out before they've lived any life on their own.
Right.
Outside of the house, outside of college, in the dormitories. It's like, hey, you need to have your whole life figured out by 22. Fuck that, right? You are not supposed to have your life figured out at 22.
No.
You are on an exploratory mission to find out who you are and what you love and what you want to be. And that may change from chapter to chapter. There was a time in my life when all I wanted to be was a currency trader. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to sit in front of a screen and trade for 5 or 6 hours a day and then go and play golf. I hate golf today. I don't ever want to play golf again. Okay? My point is this. At one chapter of my life, that's what I was passionate about. And I poured myself into it and I became a success at it. And then I said, you know what? It might be nice to kind of teach some people this stuff because that's kind of fun. I kind of like teaching. And so I built a company doing that. And in that process, I realized, hey, you know what? I don't really like the trading as much as I do the business stuff. I kind of like building the business, but I wonder if I could do this again. Like, I wonder if this business I built, if that was just a fluke, or if I could actually do it again. And you know what else I kind of like? I like politics. So let me start a podcast and see if I can turn that podcast into something that produces me enough income to live off of. So I started my political podcast. And then I realized, you know what? I don't really want to talk about this anymore because I got all these yahoos out here who say they're all about freedom and self-sufficiency, but what they really want to do is complain and to feel better than everybody else. So you know what? I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to go find the people who really just love being self-sufficient, who want to start a business and who want to kind of do that because I know how to do that. And so there are multiple chapters in my life that I've led, and at every one of them, I was super passionate about it, and I poured myself into it, and I found a way to be successful at it. You got to find those things for yourself, and you got to understand that what you're doing now may not be the thing you do forever, but if you're passionate about it and you're getting fulfillment from it today, that's what's really important. And if you can combine that fulfillment and that meaning that you have with the work that you do with being paid well for it, man, forget about it. Like, life is sweet. That's what we aspire to. I think entrepreneurial minimalism at its core is being able to wake up every day and do work that you find meaningful, surrounded by people that you love and admire, and being paid well for what you do. That's what it is when we talk about entrepreneurial minimalism. So if I got to close it out before we end, that's kind of what I would do.
Jason, you got 4 guys here that are really, really appreciative of what you've done, the patience that you've had with us, and the trials and the tribulations that you go through on a weekly basis with all of us who get together, you know, on your calls and on your private stuff. Why don't you go ahead and promote the leverage course or the leverage group, let everybody know what's going on there. And then we're going to wrap it up. And like I said, man, I want to thank you so much for being here. I've been, it was heart thumping just to ask you to be on here because I don't know, it's one of those things like, he's my star, but no,
man, yeah. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do it. I'm glad you guys are doing this. Like, every one of you came together because of, you know, the network that we created. Right. And it's not me. I just put the thing together. Like, you guys found each other. You guys collaborated. You guys have built this thing. And I think it's amazing to see what every single one of you is doing. It's impressive to me. It's humbling to me that this is all, that this is the result of an idea that I had, but it was all you guys. Like, I don't take credit for any of that. But anyway,
we never
this
would
is
have. We would never would have met because I
Right.
mean, shit. Me being in the hip hop space and Bruce being over in California doing weird shit on the weekends playing golf, and Ken being a motorcycle nut and all that. Like we never would have met each other.
Yeah.
Like, in any way.
Well, so you got that up. I would say go to jasonstapleton.com and sign up for the newsletter. Rather than pitching you a product to go and buy, come and see. I send an email out every 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, where I just talk about business. I talk about entrepreneurship. I talk about all the stuff that marketing and sales, all the stuff that goes around building an effective business. And if that's you and you're interested in that, go sign up for that. And if you like it, stay on it. If you don't, you can unsubscribe and it'll be great. But that's what I would direct everybody to. So I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
Sign up for that newsletter. It's not what you think it is. It is a daily dose of inspiration, and it really isn't just some newsletter sales piece of crap. It really is something. I know that our head sales lady looks forward to them every single day, and she'll come over to me and she goes, "Did you read Jason's letter today? Oh, I'm going to use this because it's truly is. It's a free asset. This is how Jason got me. He says, well, look at how good the free stuff is. Imagine what the paid stuff is like." And he proved it out. So, and I think all of us here would agree with that. We're all at different levels, but Jason's been an inspiration for all of us to do this stuff and to continue doing. Like you said, we figured this out ourselves. He just was the conduit to put us together in the same mindset. So we appreciate that, Jason. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
So
guys.
subscribe, like, and do all those things that you're supposed to do. And we're going to be back next week with another edition of the Weather Report. Thank you guys for being here. And like I said, have a great night and be good to yourselves. Later on.
Yeah.
See ya.